Okay, so we're going to start with some finger crocheting and get a really good understanding of how to work with the yarn, okay? So to start off, you've got the short end and then the working yarn that comes out of the yarn ball. And you're just going to make a slip knot. And so what I do is I just crisscross the yarn and make a loop. Okay. So you've got the little crisscross here. And then I take the working yarn, the one that's attached to the ball of yarn, and I put it through that circle and then pull. And that makes kind of a little slip knot. And you can work that slip knot however you want down. Okay? So just so you get an idea of how crochet works, we are going to do some finger crocheting. So again, you're going to take the tail of the yarn and kind of put it off to the side. And then the working yarn is over here. And kind of keep your loop front to you. You're going to come from behind the loop and you're going to push that yarn through the loop and grab it with your finger. Okay. And once it comes through, you can tighten it a little bit to get your first crochet stitch. And there it is. So I'm going to kind of pull the other working yarn out just to make the loop a little smaller so you can kind of see it. There's your first stitch right there. It almost looks like a little knot. Okay. Always keeping that knot and this loop in front, and then taking the working yarn and pushing it through the back of the loop and grabbing that yarn through the loop. Okay, kind of put your finger in it so you don't lose that, and then just tighten it up to make sure the stitches look even. And there's your second stitch. Again, pull the working yarn back. There's your second stitch. So you have 2 stitches. Continue to do that. Take the yarn, working yarn, put it back through the loop, grab the loop, tighten it a little bit. Make the loop a little smaller. And just, you'll start to get a real good hang of it after a while. What you're trying to do is make sure that your stitches look even. So I can kind of get it so you can kind of see the stitches a little bit better. You want them nice and even. And you want to always kind of pull that loop back just a little bit. Okay, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. You can kind of see the little loops and you can count them. So do a few more of those, and then we're going to change over to our hook to show you the difference. Always untwisting this loop is helpful. You don't want it to get too twisted. So you'll get a hang of it and just keep going. Trying to keep your stitches as even as possible through that chain untwist. Okay, always having that little loop at the top. Once you get that down, we're going to move to a crochet hook. So how we would normally do it is we would push that yarn through the back of the loop, right? We're going to take our crochet hook and we're going to put it through the front of the loop. And instead of pushing the yarn through, we're going to have the hook do all the work now. We're going to wrap the yarn around the hook. So I've kind of got this finger grabbing the tail, right? I'm going to wrap this around the hook. And then I'm going to change to this hand holding, and I'm going to help that yarn through the hook, or using the hook. So instead of my finger pulling the yarn through, the hook now is pulling the yarn through the hook, or through the center of the loop. The thing is, I'll never have to necessarily take my hook out of the loop just always winds up back on it, okay? So keeping my hand holding everything, I'm going to grab the yarn and then pull the yarn through the loop. Wrap it, change my hand so I can pull the yarn through the loop. Okay, and that is a single crochet. You know you've got this down when the stitches are pretty even all the way across. So you want to do about 10 stitches, maybe take it out and then start over again with your slip stitch and practice holding the tail of your yarn, wrapping your yarn from front to back and going through the loop. Through the loop. I always like to wrap my yarn from back to front. So see how the hook stays up? I'll wrap the yarn around the hook and then pull through. Pull through. You'll get the hang of it after a while. But again, you know you're ready to move on when these stitches look nice and even across. All right, so that's your first task, is to learn how to do the simple foundation chain, just a simple chain stitch, and then we will move on to making our second row.